Oh boy. Some query. Hello?
Hello? Am I not, is anybody hearing me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
we
hear
hear
you.
you.
Can hear you now.
Hear you clear.
Hello?
Clearly, we're hearing you clear.
Deborah, this is
Hello?
Granville. I can hear you.
Hi.
Hmm.
Hey, Ms. Granville, while you're on the wire, Kaja Cool is excused for today's meeting. Good evening, everyone. We will get started shortly. We're waiting
Hello?
for more people to join the room. Deb, do you hear me? We hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Deborah, she was
Don't
just
have no
saying that she
volume.
could hear you.
So, Deb, you don't hear us? Okay, then I'd suggest that you log out and log back in. Because I'm speaking now. Thumbs up. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to the October land use meeting. Can you wait a few minutes, just a couple more minutes, so we can have a few of our members join us? I don't quite think we have quorum. It seems as if we have many visitors, and we just need a few people to come in.
Okay, I could hear you now, I think.
Okay, you can hear me, Deb?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
All right. And we have Najani here. Ms. Granville, hold on one second.
Here.
No, I wanted you to eyeball it to see if we have quorum. I don't think so.
In case, this is Karen Gray. In case you lose me, I'm out working on the road and my battery is running a bit low. Just wanting to let everyone know.
Thank you, Karen.
Sharon, at this point, I see 30 boxes with a name in each box.
Okay, so let's try roll call and see if we have quorum.
Okay, I'm in the
Albert.
meeting. Ooh, sorry.
You want me to start?
Yes, ma'am. Call the roll and see if we have quorum, please.
Albert Appleton,
Present.
Lisa Atkinson, Princess Ben James,
Good evening, present.
Robert Callahan,
Here.
Nora Daniel, Najani Granville here, Karen Gray,
Hi, here.
Picture.
Jennifer Jordan,
Here.
Zerzima Jordan,
Here.
Peter Crashes,
Here.
Nicole May,
Here.
Francis Langley, Dr. Sarah Lazore,
Here.
Quasi Menza, Mimi Mitchell, Fior Ortiz, Robert Puka, Jack Robinson,
Here.
Kim Robinson,
Yes, present.
Ethel Tyus,
Present.
Issa Witherspoon,
Chair Witherspoon is also excused.
okay. Sharon Wedderburn,
Here.
Elaine Weinstein,
Here.
Deborah Young.
Here.
Counting 16.
Ortiz Joyner is present.
Thumbs up. We are operating in quorum. So-
Ortiz, that would be 17.
Correct. All right. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October land use meeting. I'm looking forward to a full spirited review of the items we have before us. So item number 1 on the agenda is an LPC application for certificate of appropriateness for 1450 Pacific Street. Are the applicants present?
Yes.
Okay, let's begin the presentation, please.
All right. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, and I just want to remind everyone that's on the meeting that in order to ask questions when the time shall come, if you could please use the raised hand feature. And if you are unable to use the raised hand feature, wave your hand. We have Deb Young, who has so graciously volunteered to monitor our participation from that standpoint. May I say one thing? I see that Councilwoman Hudson is in the meeting. Councilwoman, would you like to say something before we begin?
Sure. I don't know, is it appropriate for me to give an update on the rezoning now?
Are you going to be with us for the entire meeting?
I'm not going to be with you for the entire meeting. Andrew
Then
will
we'll-
be.
Well, would you be comfortable with Andrew giving you giving the update?
Absolutely.
Okay, if you want to bring forth greetings, we'll certainly entertain that.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining another committee meeting for CB8. This is, where so many really important decisions and discussions happen. And so I'm really happy to see so many people actively engaged. And as mentioned, Andrew will provide an update a little bit later on in the process about the rezoning for Atlantic Avenue. And I would just like to say, if I may, that I'm committed to not approving any projects in the rezoning area until we've gone through the rezoning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So who's presenting for 1450 Pacific? Is this Mr.?
Madam
This is-
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we entertain our applicant, I did see a hand raised by Ms. Lazar. I don't know if you took it down, but I did
Oh,
see it
I'm
come up.
sorry. I
Oh.
sorry, this is Sarah Lazar. I was just using the clapping reaction.
Oh, okay.
So sorry about that.
No problem. Okay.
Okay, everyone, let's proceed on 1450 Pacific Street.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Goodstein from NC2 Architecture. We were here last month presenting our project, and it wasn't very well received. So we thought instead of moving forward and going directly to landmarks after the hearing, we'd make some changes to try to address some of the concerns of the neighborhood before actually proceeding with that. And we postponed our landmarks hearing, which will be later this month. And we wanted to present you with the revised design. And you'll also see some really nice photo montages later on, which we didn't have last time. So, so this is a freestanding building. Since I presented last time, I'm going to go through fairly quickly unless someone has an objection to that. I don't want to bore people. So would that be sufficient just to kind of quickly go past context and all of that?
I'm sure we'll slow you down if someone needs to be able to take in the information a little bit
That's
more
perfect.
slowly.
Great, that's perfect. Okay, so there's a freestanding house. It's on Pacific Street near the corner of Kingston. And we're going to landmarks with 3 items for the hearing. I mean, first of all, I should say the project involves a gut renovation of the interiors. It's going to remain a 2-family house. And the exteriors are going to be completely renovated to, to historic, to the historic condition. And as most of you know, we did the same kind of job around the corner at 1375 Dean Street. So the hearing items are some changes at the roof, some enlargement at the roof, adding a roof deck to the garage, which is not original to the building, and then making some changes at the front wall of the building, which will bring it more in keeping with what we think the original design of the building was. So this is showing the location, Pacific Kingston. And just some context photos. That's what the rear of the building looks like. So the revised visibility diagram, what you do see from our enlargement is from directly across the street, a little bit of a handrail. So we'll get to that in a photo montage later on. And you do see, obviously, within the field of view, you will see a little bit of the handrail above the garage. Elevations, demo elevations. The roof is going to be raised slightly, the sloped roof, the existing sloped roof. And then the elevation always reads very strangely because you're seeing everything in one flat 2D plane. This is far into the background, our enlargement. I see a little bit of a handrail here. We actually are raising up the front parapet of the garage, which was lowered over the years. We're going to return that to its historical height. We're also going to carry that height around to the sides to help conceal the railing, which you'll see in a minute. There's a demo existing condition, and this is the proposed one. You'll see that our proposal is all at the back of the building, except for the small amount of handrail that is fairly close to the street. You do see over here also the lowered curb instead of that big concrete wall, and a nice gate that's probably similar to what was there originally. And rear elevation, not all that important. You don't see any of this from the street. And then this is kind of the alleyway on the side, the 5-foot wide alleyway to the next door to the multiple dwelling next door. And again, raising the parapet here, so you see less of the handrail. And then our enlargement that looks much larger here than it would in real life. So visibility. So we built a mock-up, and the place where you have the sort of longest view and see the most of the roof as a whole is back on Kingston. It's about 175 feet away. Once you get a little further than that, this building starts blocking the way. This building blocks the way. So it's actually only like a very small viewport into the from where you see the roof. So this is kind of in the greater context. There's very little that you see. We did blow it up over here to show the mock-up. So you do see a little bit of most of this actually is a handrail. It's not actually building massing. It's just a handrail. And like I said, it's so far in the distance at the point where you see this maximal visibility. This is a little bit closer. This is the maximum visibility to the actual massing of the building, to the enlargement. So this is building over. You can see a little bit of the orange screening that Landmarks requires us to put that actually shows massing of the building. And from here, what you'll notice is you see nothing of the handrail. From this point of view, you do see a little bit of the enlargement. Moving on, when you're standing directly in front of the building, also the mock-up, you do see a bit of the handrail. You saw this on the visibility diagram as well, very similar to this. This also shows the mock-up of the handrail and the raised restored parapet in front of the garage. And look at that, isn't that beautiful? We did we did a bit of a color analysis, stripped back some of the paint to find out what the existing colors probably were. And we came up with, it was sort of a green color, and most likely this kind of two-tone paint on the facade, on the wood elements of the facade. On the porch, the lower part of the porch would be stripped down to the natural wood, but up on the cornice, this very dramatic cornice, the wood is the sort of two-toned green color, and our proposal is to sort of match the wood construction of the cornice, building up with wood clapboards, painted a green color, which is in keeping with the historical top of this building. And here's a photo montage also of the restored garage, showing the raised parapet and much less now than last time of the railing that you would see when you're at this view. We showed these last time. These were just some similar roof deck on top of garage projects from historic districts. And then I'll conclude with the two beautiful photo montages and open it up to discussion.
I cannot believe that no one has a raised hand.
Right.
I had to double check that.
I was wondering if my speaker went out or something.
My hand is
We have
raised.
Ms. Lazar.
Yeah, I just very quickly, I am very impressed with the work that they've done to modify this project, and I'm just curious to hear what members of Crown Heights North Association have to say about this. Thank you.
We have Ms. Ortiz.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Young. I was actually going to say that being that the renderings have changed and changes have been made, the new renderings were not submitted to the Crown Heights North Association for review. So we didn't have an opportunity to have an opinion on them.
Oh, I thought that we had sent out an email with this presentation to Crown Heights North Association together with the community board. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Okay.
But definitely there was the intention to do that.
Okay, we have Ms. Lazar's hand up again.
Sorry, I just forgot to take it down.
Take it down, okay. Okay, let me raise my hand and acknowledge myself, Deborah Young, Crown Heights North Association. I don't know if Ethel Tyus is on the call, but I have to say that the renderings do look impressive, improved from last time, but as it has already been stated by Ms. Joyner, and I don't know what happened, we may have dropped the ball, so I don't want to just put it on the developer in this case that we did not review it. So I'm not so sure what happened. So at this association.
Just to the members of China who had extensive comments in our previous meeting, there were concerns regarding the roof line, the visibility of the railing, the change in the parapet. Could any of you address that or have the presenter go to those particular pages in his presentation so that you might be able to examine this? As you know, as they stated early on, they postponed their hearing before LPC, and they now have a new meeting date. And can you tell me what that meeting date is, please?
I believe it's the 25th. David, do you know off the top of your head?
Okay.
I can check my calendar. I
So
think
as
it's the 20th. Yeah.
Thank you. So as everyone who is a member of the
Yes,
community
25th.
board knows that we would have to vote on this item next week. So I would appreciate comments. I'm soliciting comments. Nix, was that your hand that I saw that was up, or did you pull that down?
No, I just put it up, and I just want to say that I really appreciate the applicant's effort in trying to maintain the face of the historical building. So yeah, I'm grateful for like the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Nix. Fior, I see that your hand is up.
Yes, if the applicant could please go to the rendering that represents the mock railing on the roof from, I believe, Kingston Avenue.
Not, oh, the rail, oh, the mock-up.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. It's this one.
Yeah, I'm interested in the small picture on the lower right.
Okay.
If I'm, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the lines I'm seeing from there are much more than what the picture with the green cornice show. So
I
that's,
know. It took me a while to figure that one out too. So what you're looking at here is let me do this. Let me go to the front elevation. So what we did was we pulled the railing back on the side over here. So from Kingston, you're seeing this railing. And of course, it's not going to look as heavy as it looks in the sort of black and white drawing. But you'll see that the actual massing of the building, the enlargement, kind of juts out from it. You don't see that from the Pacific Street view because that railing is back here. But when you take the really long view, you see the railing, but you don't see the enlargement. You see a little bit of the raised roof, but very, very little of that. But you don't see the enlargement in the back. You just see that railing. And again, that railing is over, on the right, maybe 2/3 of the building. It doesn't go across the whole building.
and that railing will be black? What color will the railing be?
We've had issues like this with landmarks recently, and what they tend to prefer is like a lightish gray because it blends with the sky better than black, and I kind of have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And how about, excuse me, the railing over the garage? I don't recall what color that was.
That is going to be black. The reason being, all of the metal work, you see where I'm pointing here, when we rebuild the gates here, and the gates, again, we're going to try to replicate what we think was there historically. And those gates are only going to be about this tall. Those are going to be black because that's kind of traditional for street level fences. And we thought because of the proximity, the black kind of makes more sense on the garage, and that's also not silhouetted against the sky.
And as you mentioned in your presentation tonight, you will be having a rooftop over the garage. Because I know that was something that was mentioned in the initial meeting at the last land use meeting.
It was, yes, we had covered that at the last meeting, and there were comments about that. And to address those comments, one thing that we did was we raised the side parapet here. Historically, this building had this parapet height, but it kind of dropped down over here. But we're raising that up to help, kind of mask the steel behind it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See any other hands?
If there are no other questions on this matter, I'll entertain a motion from the committee.
This is Elaine Weinstein. I move to accept this new rendering and just want to comment that I think it's a beautiful job how you revisited it, and the color contrast is really quite lovely aesthetically. But that's a motion, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Elaine and Robert, I'm going to apologize to you. Do you have anything to say pertaining to this motion, or would you like to second this motion?
Ms. Wedderburn, I actually was hoping to make an amendment, but it probably, I think
It needs to be
procedurally we
seconded
have to second first.
Yep, it needs to be seconded first.
I'm happy to second the motion, if I can also speak on an amendment.
Let's try and keep this pure and
Yes,
pure.
it's certainly meant to be in the spirit of this. I actually only wanted to comment and say that it might be appropriate to say that unless they don't feel like they need it, that the motion to approve be conditional on China having the appropriate time to review and approve in time for our meeting next week. Does that feel correct, or are we going too far?
Well, I want to hear a second first, and then let's make the amendment.
Well, forgive me. I did want to second.
You want to make the second?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask that someone else make the second so that Mr. Callahan might be able to proceed with an amendment.
I second.
Okay.
Who's that?
Nix Lemler.
Thanks, Nix. Robert, go ahead and state your amendment, please.
The amendment, just to restate, was to make our approval of this conditional on China's approval before ahead of the meeting. Apologies if I'm being a little inelegant here. And if that's not needed, if the representatives from China feel like they've had their time to review this and we understand the expediency here, then I can withdraw that motion and make it moot.
Okay. Well, I raised my hand.
Thank you.
I would like for China to make the commitment, because it appears that we may have dropped the ball, and I don't think that the applicant should be harmed or inconvenienced because we may not have done what we should have done. So I would like China to, and I, on behalf of China, make the commitment for us to review this and weigh in. We definitely and commit ourselves to weighing in and giving feedback prior to the full board meeting.
Thank you for making that commitment.
I will agree with Ms. Young, and I thank Mr. Callahan for making that amendment.
Okay. Hearing that we have an amendment that is acceptable to the motion maker, Ms. Weinstein, this is acceptable to you?
It is indeed.
All right, Ms. Granville, would you proceed with the roll call?
Albert Appleton. Mr. Appleton. Lisa Atkinson.
Yes.
Princess Ben James. Robert Callahan.
Yes.
Yes. Princess Ben James, yes.
Okay. Nora Daniel. Nijani Granville, yes. Karen Gray.
Yes.
Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Zerzima Jordan.
Yes.
Peter Crashers.
Yes.
Nicola May.
Yes.
Francis Langley. Dr. Sarah Lazore.
Yes.
Quasi Menza.
Yes.
Mimi Mitchell.
I just wanted to say that I had sent an email for an excused lateness. Sorry for my tardiness. And yes, my vote is a yes.
Thea Ortiz.
Yes.
Robert Puka, Jack Robinson,
Yes.
Ken Robinson,
Yes.
Ethel Tyus,
Abstain.
Irsa Witherspoon,
Questions for Mr. Soka?
excuse me, you had told me that she was excused, so that's my error.
Correct.
Sharon Wedderburn,
Yes.
Elaine Weinstein,
Yes.
Deborah Young.
Yes.
Did Mr. Appleton ever vote? Okay, I didn't recall hearing him say anything.
He may have stepped away.
I have 18 yeses and 1 abstention.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Please make haste, as the elders would say, to provide your presentation to Crown Heights North Association so that they may review it in advance of our board meeting, which will be next Thursday at Casablanca, located on Nostrand and Sterling, Nostrand Avenue and Sterling Place. Please enter on the Sterling Place side.
Hey.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Is this Mr. Appleton?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now we hear you.
Yeah, I was talking the whole time, but I actually thought you heard the first time when I had voted, but yeah, okay. So I guess there was something wrong with my computer.
So do you have a vote?
Yeah, yeah, my vote was yes.
Okay.
That changes the vote to 19, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Appleton. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making the changes that we had discussed, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
If I may just say one word, I really appreciate the community board, and it's a pleasure to work with you. Be part of this community and committed to have this community beautiful and keep the treasures that we have around here. I live here, I'm part of you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome to the neighborhood. Thank you so much. So next we're going to commence the discussion. Let me make sure I have the correct address for 962 Pacific. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I just wanted to remind the committee that this is purely a discussion item. This is something that we will not be voting. It's informational at this juncture. So could you please proceed with the presentation for 962 Pacific?
Thank you. Good evening. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. I'm joined by Fayan Baton from my office, who's controlling the screen. And we have an applicant team here. I believe Nadine is going to give the bulk of the presentation. I'm going to discuss some of the zoning aspects of the proposal, and then everyone here is happy to answer questions. Nadine, would you like to begin?
Yes. Hello, I'm Nadine Olsner, the owner of 962 Pacific Street, and thank you for having me here. As you can see, the applicant team for 962 Pacific Street is Richard LaBelle from Sheldon LaBelle, Nick Liberius at Archimera, and Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. We have been working together for close to 2.5 years, and it's been an excellent group to work with. Thank you. In the interest of providing just the project basics at this preliminary meeting, the focus of the presentation is to introduce you to the other members of our team and to focus on affordable housing and M-Crown uses. At a future meeting, Nick and Kevin will be available to go over architectural and environmental issues. Slide 2. Okay. First, I'm going to give you a quick intro to HSN Realty Corp. We are a women-owned and managed family business. Our family has been long-term stakeholders in this community for over 70 years, and we operated a car dealership in the Crown Heights area since the 1940s. After World War II, my grandfather moved his business to 975 Atlantic Avenue and became a GM dealer. My whole family worked at Atlantic Motors. I started at the age of 12 as a switchboard operator and part-time bookkeeper. Child labor laws were much looser then. The business grew, and in the 1960s, my father purchased 1030 Atlantic Avenue and moved the service department into the building, and then eventually purchased 962 Pacific Street to store used cars. We have been active participants in the neighborhood, and we have viewed Brooklyn in decades. We are active supporters of Community Board 8 and have been consistently involved since the inception of the M-Crown Subcommittee rezoning process. On slide 3, you'll see the lot. Over the years, 962 was used for the storage of used cars. About 15 years ago, we consolidated multiple parcels into one, which we rented until 2018 to a local business owner who used it for truck and property storage. In 2018, we took a loan on the property and used the proceeds to clean up the lot and help relocate the business owner to Red Hook. 962 Pacific Street has now been vacant for the past 5 years in anticipation of rezoning. Slide 4. As you know, the site sits in the heart of a fast-changing neighborhood. This slide is the most recent Community Board Needs Assessment. It identifies land use trends as a top issue, with the need for affordable housing a major component of that issue. Also, through our involvement in the M-Crown planning process, we understand the imperative that any new housing development also balances the need for preserving industrial and manufacturing uses in the area. We get this. We see the potential for 962 Pacific Street to try and achieve two major objectives as outlined by the Community Board. One, to create affordable housing, and two, preserving space for M-Crown uses. Slide 5. As many of you know, over the past 3 years, 5 sites have been rezoned in the immediate 2-block radius of our site. You can see from this slide that the entire eastern and western sections of our block, including a piece of 962 Pacific Street, have been rezoned R7A. Unfortunately, of the 3 rezonings that have resulted in R7A zoning, none has committed to M-Crown uses. This is something we hope to address at 962 Pacific Street. We need to create much-needed housing and preserve manufacturing space in keeping with the M-Crown framework. Slide 6. This slide demonstrates our work towards this rezoning process over the past 10 years. After the city presented the Community Board with the M-Crown rezoning framework in 2018, we secured project financing and began work to remediate the site at the cost of several $1 million. We are now headed towards a major crossroad in this process. After 4 years of proceeding with our application in good faith, we have now been told that we must wait several more years before the site will be rezoned. The problem is that our loan has grown over the years due to the delays in filing, which will soon force us to make hard decisions and potentially risk losing the site. Slide 7. The proposal we bring before you tonight accomplishes 3 main goals. One, it provides much needed affordable housing on a site which is shovel ready. In light of COVID, the majority of the residential units include home office space to allow work from home opportunities in this evolving work environment. 3, it provides close to 30,000 square feet of M-Crown uses, made up of approximately 20,000 square feet of manufacturing M-Crown space and 10,000 square feet early childhood educational center, providing high quality, affordable care for working families within the surrounding community. I'm going to turn it over to our land use attorney, Richard LaBelle, now to walk you through the zoning actions that would be needed to achieve these benefits. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Nadine, and thanks to the committee. Very briefly, you can see the current zoning on the map, obviously M11 with, as Nadine mentioned, R7A to either side of the property. And it's a little hard to see right here, but as we go through specifically to the next map, the area map, you'll be able to see a little bit more why this rezoning is appropriate. So you can see the area highlighted in red. That's the site itself, which would be rezoned to M14 R7A. To the left of the site or the west of the site, part of this property itself was rezoned in the Pacific and Grand Streets rezoning. You can see the R7A sitting to the west of the site. To the east of the site are the 1010 and 1050 Pacific Street rezonings, which again rezoned to an R7A equivalent. So as Nadine said, this would basically fill in this parcel with the same residential zoning as was achieved in those other rezonings, with the exception that this applicant would actually make the commitments necessary to ensure M-Crown uses. This is no small thing. There were roughly 25 lots or portions of lots included in those other rezonings. And this is the only one that was not so rezoned. In fact, a portion of it was rezoned. So most of the property sits as an M11. The next slide shows how this fits within the M-Crown framework. And to just kind of recap the committee and the community board's discussions around the R7A rezonings, these were largely without incident. The rezonings that were on Atlantic Avenue, obviously most recently, were hotly contested. There was a lot of discussion around bulk and use. The R7A rezonings, not so. This was all seen to be within the rezoning as provided by the Western Mid-Block Mixed-Use Sub-Area at an FAR of close to 4, an R7A being a 4.6, ground floor commercial uses, and a commitment to M-Crown uses. So again, this provides a real leg up in terms of actually effectuating the M-Crown framework as was detailed by the board. The last slide that I'll discuss is the next slide, which just discusses again the fact that we're reconciling the zoning on either side. This is really more filling in the appropriate rezoning. Having been the applicant and represented the applicant for 1010, 1050, and Pacific and Grand, we were very well aware of those rezonings, of the fact that for the R7A district, they were approved. When 1010 came in with an R7D, the committee did not approve it in R7D, and the R7A that was approved at 1050 was approved at the time. So the R7A zoning districts were approved. They were approved as mixed-use districts. This would provide the same MX district as is already existing on 1050 Pacific to the east. So, with that, I would turn it back over to Nadine to conclude the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Slide 13. Consistent with prior community board discussions, we have focused on, I think I'm on 12, excuse me. Okay, Fayam, we're on slide 12. Thank you. We touched on this earlier, but just to reiterate the highlights of the building program and proposal. Regarding affordable housing, if approved by the Community Board and Councilmember Hudson, 962 Pacific Street would bring approximately 150 new housing units to the neighborhood, with approximately 40 of those units permanently affordable under option 1. We think it's of critical importance that this building will transform a now vacant lot into new homes for neighborhood families. While R7A zoning would allow for up to 199 units across our site, We are only proposing approximately 150 units here. We have purposely and intentionally eliminated all studio apartments from this proposed building and instead created 1, 2, and 3 bedroom spacious units in order to accommodate the tenants in this community that need housing the most, working families. Slide 13. Consistent with prior community board discussions, we have focused on MIH option 1 with affordable units provided at an average of 60 AMI. This would allow us to provide nearly 40 affordable apartments in this building at AMIs ranging from approximately 40 to 70,000 per year. All tenants, regardless of rent level, will have access to the building's amenities, and the finishings in the affordable units will be exactly the same as the market rate ones. We want everyone in the building to feel like the valued tenants that they are. We have partnered with Fifth Avenue Committee, a well-respected affordable housing advocate, to advise us on this portion of the building and eventually administer the Affordable Housing Lottery. Jane Marcus, Director of Real Estate at Fifth Avenue Committee, is here with us tonight and can take any questions you have. Slide 14. Regarding M-Crown uses, we have designated almost 2/3 of the commercial space in the building towards these uses. Currently, the entire cellar level of the building, nearly 20,000 square feet, is contemplated for M-Crown. And to help us curate the space, we have forged a partnership with industrial advocate Evergreen Exchange to advise us on what industrial users currently need space in the area, and with a focus on providing job opportunities to local residents. Slide 15. Through thoughtful design, we believe we can create a ground floor entrance into the space worthy of local makers and job providers that elevates their standing in the neighborhood, and have added rear yard skylights that allow for natural light to flow into many of their workspaces. We are joined tonight by Leah Archibald, Executive Director of Evergreen, who would be happy to answer any questions you have about the M-Crown component. Thank you, Leah. Slide 16. Regarding the Early Childhood Center, we understand from the Community Board 8 needs assessment that more and more families and younger adults looking to start families have been moving into the district, driving a demand for child-focused resources. To address this, we propose the creation of the Early Childhood Educational Center that could also be a great complement to the live-work model, not to mention creating dozens of new jobs. The Educational Center is an important part of the project to me personally. I've been a working mother and now a working grandmother my whole life. 35 years ago, early childhood programs and child care programs were limited and mostly run by mom and pop organizations. I was asked to be an advisor to an early childhood program called Magic Years, which eventually rolled into KinderCare. I have followed this industry closely for 40 years, and the research about the long-term benefits of early childhood care programs is clear. They help children to achieve strong learning skills and thus greater academic success, greater social and emotional maturity, higher self-esteem, and a greater capacity of self-learning. These are just a few examples of the foundation that all children need to function well. Slide 17. Access to Early Childhood Development Center is more critical now than ever, with reports showing that early childhood enrollment dropped drastically during the pandemic, disproportionately affecting disabled learners, children of color, and those from low-income households. Slide 18. And on the public education side, there are reports every day about budget constraints faced by the Department of Education. That means newer programs like expanded 3K are on the potential chopping block. And there are no plans to build new public early educational centers in this district. So there's a demand for other independent educational programs to fill the gap. Slide 19. Imagine a program that offers early childhood classes that complement the businesses in the building, STEAM-based educational offerings from robotics to creative arts to nature days that could be offered at a priority to children in the district. We have already begun preliminary conversations with educational institutions in Brooklyn with a focus on serving the needs of neighborhood families and providing low-cost, effective educational options. Slide 20. Regarding home office space, we have worked with our architects to design an innovative residential model that we think has great relevance in the post-pandemic era where so many now work remotely. As such, on the next slide, you'll see, on slide 21, as such, our architects have designed the residential units where the majority feature home office space available to all unit sizes and income levels within the building. The next slide. Thank you. Finally, a ground floor activated by a commercial use, such as a cafe or bookstore, will ensure this building enhances the vibrancy of the neighborhood. Slide 23. In sum, we hope that our commitment to M-Crown uses, the programmatic vision of a child care center, and accessible work-from-home opportunities will make this building a desirable home for families in the neighborhood, a potential model for how to support working mothers and fathers through thoughtful building design, amenities, and programs. Thank you. Richard?
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. And Nadine, I wouldn't mind just kind of summing up because obviously, with regards to the community board and the council member, there's always questions which arise now, which is why would we do this now in the face of what amounts to be an area-wide rezoning? And really, there's three main reasons why it's important with regards to timing. The first is financial pressure. As Nadine said, they started this process in 2019. In fact, at a time when other M-Crown private rezonings were going through, and for several reasons were held off for certain amounts of time, and so now they face this growing financial burden with regards to the property. And so, with the uncertainty with regards to time frame going forward, and frankly, the way that financial markets are and the loss of 421A, going forward with this process right now would be important to them to keep the property and to potentially save them from losing a property, which could have other results. It's not a given that a development of this nature would happen. And importantly, this is a development which, as everyone can recognize, brings things to the table which other prior applications have not. So the first thing with regards to timing are these financial issues. The second thing is affordable housing. Nadine mentioned it's no small thing that their family has been in this area for 70 years. To be able to actually productively use this property for housing for the area for 150 units, again, on a rezoning basis, if they got the same zoning that everyone else did, it would be an R7A and would support 200 units. That's not the goal here. The goal is to have 150 units, have larger unit sizes, and have considerate and thoughtful units that basically allow for workspaces for families and for working mothers, which would be available to market rate and affordable units alike. This is kind of an important part of this whole project. So there's the financial issue, which was mentioned. There's the affordable housing and the quality of that housing. And then finally, it's M-Crown use. Nearly 30,000 square feet of M-Crown use, in addition to an early childhood center, which approaches 11,000 square feet and close to 20,000 square feet of M-Crown uses. Leah Archibald is on the phone with us. We've discussed this as a project team. The uses that are discussed here don't really look at the M-Crown uses and say, okay, what's the least we can do? The involvement of Evergreen here is to ensure we do the most we can do to have high job generating uses and to really make an impact with this development. So, in conclusion, I would just note that we've been around for some time, and you look at this area of Pacific Street and the R7A zonings that have taken place to date, and it's not a given that this is going to be the case, that you're going to have an opportunity to move forward now with this type of development. This is a vacant lot. There's no displacement that would be directly caused by this. There's no existing jobs or existing residents who would be displaced. They are shovel ready. They are remediated. This is something which could happen now. And so as I listen and as I hear about the housing crisis in the city of New York, the demand for a greater workforce options and for jobs, this is really an application which doesn't just present a project, it presents a program which would benefit the entirety of the community. So with that, Nadine, myself, and the entire applicant team is happy to answer questions.
Ms. Tice, I see that you were an early hand raiser or someone who didn't lower their hand.
No, I raised it early because I wanted to give kudos to the Olsners and to Mr. LaBelle paying attention down through the years to what we've been asking of real estate investors coming into our community, and they dotted every I and crossed every T. And again, I give them big kudos for paying attention to what's really needed. One thing we all have to be aware of is that with early childhood education, as long as the school day is ending early compared to the work day for the parents, we are going to have to pay close attention to that guidance and child care gap. And our society, our communities have to be willing to step up and close that gap. And if it's tax money, then it's well spent. And again, I can only congratulate the Olsners for paying close attention and for Richard LaBelle putting together a team that would get this done. I'm sorry, Gib Vaconi is now here to also hand clap with me and say thank you very much to the Olsners.
Thank you, Ethel.
So I just wanted to let you know who's going to be speaking and in what order. The next people that will be able to make comments or ask questions will be Deb Young, Nix, and Robert Callahan. Please proceed, Deb.
Okay, and perhaps I missed it in the presentation, but my question is related to the early childhood education center, and I want to know if there has been any preliminary or advanced discussion with the community, and if so, who have you spoken with, and what was the feedback about the plans to have an early childhood center?
So I'm happy to start, and then Nadine, do you want I'm sorry, did someone speak? Okay, all right, so Ms. Young, the conversations have basically been kind of keeping our ears open in the past as far as what the needs of the community are, and the fact that if you're creating additional density in the form of families moving to the neighborhood, addressing the educational needs of those families. So I know that Nadine, given her experience in early childhood education, has had very preliminary conversations with some providers of early childhood education with the intent of having an experienced New York City provider who's able to come in, sit down, determine what the actual needs are of Community Board 8 in this regard, and to really cater a program to what's needed by the local stakeholders. So I'm part of so many rezoning actions. The board knows this from my prior experience here. And I know what it's like when developers come in and just create the problem. And one of the reasons I'm excited about working with the Olsners and with Nadine and Bill is that they're doing something to address the problem, which I just, has been refreshing for me. And so, yes, the conversations have been just generally with stakeholders in the community and then specifically with early childhood providers. Nadine, did I get that okay?
Yes, that's excellent. We've been talking to different providers that basically in the Brooklyn marketplace that might have 2 centers or might have 5 and a little bit more, and that would want to expand into our area. And once we get moving on the rezoning, and we're a little further along, we could bring those providers in to meet all of you. And what we're really aiming for is having reduced rates for the affordable housing units and for families in the community. And we're also looking into expanding the hours because there is early childhood programs, but you also need a bit of daycare. And what we saw in the pandemic was that working mothers and especially healthcare providers, they needed longer hours of daycare. So we're trying to juggle that also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next person is Nix.
Hello. I am just really utterly a little bit out of source here, as Crystal Hudson, our councilwoman, was going and is going to be part of like really asking what the neighborhood is yearning for, what are the needs. As I have, and I'm sorry, Mr. Lobel, I have spoken with you in the past, like years ago. I feel a little bit like you certainly represent like the developers, and you don't necessarily represent the neighborhood. As I am living in this district, and I have seen the district change a lot, and in particular, Pacific Street. I need to just reiterate to everybody that change is good. Housing is great as long as it is truly affordable. I am all for affordable housing because I do know of a lot of people who had to leave this neighborhood because housing is not affordable anymore. And all those promises I'm really skeptical of. And I really want the land use committee to pay a lot attention to this proposal as much as we do to the garage in the landmarked unit, because this is really, really, really important. A lot of small businesses already have moved out and were pushed out, and these were people of low income, small businesses, and the junkyard that is supposed to be the new building on 962 Pacific Street was the home of a lot of minor but sincere workers that now had to leave. I just want everybody to understand that, yes, change is inevitable, but the big proposal, like just to use Pacific Street between Washington Avenue, Grant Avenue up to like Nostrand as like a playground for like development and big proposals, is not doing the people of the neighborhood a fair share. Thank you for hearing me out.
May I respond quickly?
Surely.
Sure. So thank you for the comments, Nix. And yes, I have been around for some time, and I have come in with developers, and I think the difference, I have a sense of history as far as what these rezonings on Pacific have been like, and for the R7A portions of these properties, none of them are bound to their promises, and so once Grand and Pacific went forward, the R7D portion, as a matter of public record, that was the first one that there was a community benefits agreement entered into. And then when the Atlantic Avenue rezonings came in, it was the same. So this is a developer, and you're right to be skeptical. This is a developer who would come in and would make written commitments and would agree to an overage of M-Crown uses and would agree to the aspects of the proposal that make this proposal great. I find it regrettable that people had to leave the community because there was not enough housing. I feel that creating 150 additional units, including 38 to 43 affordable units, is meaningful here. It is not a small number. and that particularly with regards to retail and talking about some workers that may have had to leave. And with regards to the junkyard, one of the programs we talked about with Leah at Evergreen is the opportunity to create smaller working spaces and smaller manufacturing spaces to allow some of these local manufacturers to come in. So frankly, I get it, but if a developer comes in and is forthright and tells you what they're going to do and talks the talk and walks the walk, then I think that it's important for the community board to listen. We understand that the burden's on us, and we understand the statements of the council member, but like we're asking the community board right now, what do you think? And importantly, we've got an applicant here who has been around and has been documented as being around since 2019. It's a long time to hang around and wait for a rezoning, and that's really why we're here now.
Thank you, Richard. Can I add one thing? Nicole, we welcome your input.
May I quickly just say, like Mr. Lobel, I'm really questioning your sincere care for the neighborhood, and I am just really urging you to be more attentive and more thank you. Like, I'm really questioning your integrity when it comes to the existing Brooklyn neighborhoods.
Nicole, a couple of things. We welcome your input, and Mr. LaBelle is wonderful in terms of the laws, and the laws for rezoning are so complicated. It is like learning another language. But as long as I am here, I am going to fight tooth and nail for this community. And I need your help. Now, in terms of the junkyard, that junkyard was managed by our friend Andrew MacGyver. And in 2018, when we felt the rezoning was moving forward, my family, we helped Andrew relocate to Red Hook, and we helped him get it all situated. And we have always been close contact with him. You might not know this, but unfortunately, he passed during COVID. As Mr. LaBelle mentioned, we are here with Leah Archibald. She is an amazing resource. I am in awe of the depth of knowledge that she has, and she is a wonderful advocate for not only this community, but Brooklyn. And I think we're at a point in time where we need to educate the young people for the future world, and we need to help position some of the working families into jobs that are going to be paying better wages. And that's what Leah and her organization have always done. And I thank all of you for your commitment to this community and trying to make it better. And I am right here with you. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for that. I just wanted to just repeat or review the persons who I know are going to speak. Mr. Callahan is next. Ms. Ortiz Joyner, Jack Robinson, Sarah, myself, Peter Crashes, Mr. Buckholz, Mr. Frank Quira, and Ms. Levitt. Is there anyone who I have forgotten? Okay. Nix, is your hand still up, or do you have something to say later?
Sorry, I forgot to take it down.
No worries. Okay, so Mr. Callahan, please, your query.
Thank you, Chair Wedderburn. This is sort of a broad question, but I just wanted to know there's a lot of organizations that were listed as supporting this effort. I am asking this of essentially everyone who was listed, including the developers and the representatives. Has anyone here spoken to individual members of the community board before this meeting about this specific application or any aspects of this application?
Was I too emotional? Jackie?
Nick, you're not muted.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for your questions. So, I'll let the representatives speak for themselves. And I know Leah's on the phone with us. Nadine is, as mentioned, has probably gone to at least 20 M-Crown meetings, has listened to all the comments at those meetings, and has spoken to certain people on the community board on an ongoing basis. This is our this is kind of our first focused presentation with these plans and this program. And we're not, we basically are not, have not been given any dates for ULURP yet. We don't have any hearing dates. We need to conclude our environmental review. So having said that, we're still kind of in a point where we're open to discussion and still maintaining ongoing discussion. So I would say that this would constitute some of our outreach because we're not in ULURP yet and don't have an indication of when we would be in ULURP. But I would, leave it to the remainder of the team to talk about any of their other interactions.
I'll just jump in briefly. I've not spoken with anybody at the community board about this project, but I did communicate at great length with Gib as you guys were going through developing the, what sort of industrial uses could coexist with residential and commercial as you're developing your Crown priorities.
Does that represent, if that represents if Fifth Avenue Committee has not spoken about this, if any of the other organizations, I want to sort of make sure that the meat of my question was answered. I want to know if ahead of this particular meeting, if this was discussed by representatives of this project with specific members of the community board, or if this was sort of, this is the first time that we're all speaking.
I could give you a little history on this. In December of 2019, we had a conversation with Gib Veconi, who we have known for years because of attending all the meetings. And we were also on with Mr. Barrick, and that was in December of 19. And at that time, there had already been approval for 1050 and 1010 Pacific. And so after that conversation, we hired Richard LaBelle because he's very knowledgeable of what is going on in this area. That was the first meeting. And then we did have a discussion with the Department of City Planning. We spoke with them. Actually, excuse me, I had a meeting with the Department of City Planning in April of 2019 at one time. That was the first meeting. Then with Gib Veconi and Barrick in December. And then again in the spring of 2021, we gave a presentation to Gib on where we were moving towards. And he had mentioned that he really wanted the M-Crown uses. And we think all of you in this area are real forward thinkers. And we think the M-Crown uses are very important for job generation within this environment. And so then we started to do more work and we found Leah. And that's what we've been doing. I hope that answered your question, Mr. Callahan. And
thank you.
And
yes,
again,
thank you.
I look forward to meeting you in person. I miss the meetings we all used to have in person. These last 2 years with the Zoom calls has really made it different. But I will set up a meeting with you and we could discuss all this. Thank you.
And Ms. Wedderburn, I'll yield back. I do just want to put in, before I'm gone from the queue, a strong urging that we hear from Andrew Wright sooner rather than later, because I do think that his perspective in this is going to be really important.
I understand. I'd actually prefer that Mr. Wright hear what the community's concerns are, and then with his perspective, he can address us. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Callahan. But one of the most important things for this is to be able to have the community and the committee's perspective. So with that, I'm going to ask the 2 callers that are participating in this meeting. Can you please identify yourself? The first one, 347, ending with the digits 98. Can you please identify yourself?
This is Violet. I live at 80 Kingston Avenue, next door to the building. And okay. I just wanted to log in to hear what's going on,
Okay, thank you so much, Violet. And the caller whose number is 646, ending in the 2 digits 24. Could you please identify yourself? Once again, 646 8 ending in 24. The WebEx indicates that your microphone is open so that you can speak to us. All right, we'll try again. The next person in the speaking queue is Fiora Ortiz Joyner. Ms. Joyner?
Thank you. This question is for Ms. Olsner. Ms. Olsner mentioned the length of time her family has been in the neighborhood as business owners. I wanted to know if that amount of time also included any residency, and also, does she own any other parcels in the M Crown area?
Okay, thank you for the question. We do own other parcels. As I mentioned in the history of my family's involvement in Brooklyn, we started at 975 Atlantic Avenue, which is on the north side of Atlantic. And then we moved, we also purchased in the 60s 1030 Atlantic Avenue, which was the service department and is an empty warehouse ready to work with you all and move forward with the Atlantic Avenue rezoning. And then we bought 962 Pacific in during the 60s, and that took us a while to assemble. It was like 14 separate lots, and so that's what we have. So when we have, I have been here my whole life and have had a front row seat of everything going on in this whole area. And as I said before, I started to work and my whole family worked in the dealership. In terms of, do I have a residency? I have a residency in New York, but it's not in the Crown Heights area. But nevertheless, my commitment to this area has been going on for a very long time. And as I said before, I will fight tooth and nail for this community. Thank you.
Ms. Ortiz, any follow-up? I should say
Okay,
Ms.
whatever.
Joyner.
Thank you. It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next
Madam Chair,
speaker.
I hate to butt in, but I think going forward, it would be helpful for people that may be evergreen to list the M Crown uses, because when that program was designed, it was for living wage jobs. And I don't think that should be lost to the discussion. I'm sorry.
Okay, and since I started to call on Mr. Robinson, I'm going to let him query, and then I'll ask Leah if she would just reiterate or underline what our M Crown uses. Thank you, Ms. Tyus. Mr. Robinson?
Hi, I just had a couple of points. I can just go through them and maybe have them answered. So our block has been very busy lately. We have, like they said, 5 sites. Isn't 5 sites enough? We could use a park. We could use more infrastructure. We've heard the industrial use stuff before. It never happened. They always weasel out of it. You know, the whole neighborhood plan has to be the right idea, because you can't weigh things the way that we're weighing them now, one by one, because it is indeed one solid plan to build in this neighborhood. These people have to know each other, and we're not looking at it like this. We're looking at it piece by piece, and it doesn't seem quite right. There has to be plans for public schools, not just the early childhood center. Is the childhood center a for-profit or a nonprofit? And as Mr. Lobel said, there's mechanisms in place to keep what happened at 1010 not to happen again. But his job as a lawyer is to get around those confinements, those constraints. Thank you.
Well, I'd be happy to respond to that. So my job as a lawyer is not to get around those constraints, and the goal is not to weasel out of anything. I would say that myself and several members of the community board worked on the earlier community benefits agreements and came up with a binding mechanism to allow for owners and applicants to be able to meet their commitments. So first of all, one of the great things about the hearing process is the opportunity to come in and let the community board see whether or not your applicants are sincere or insincere. And like, I'll just let Nadine, you know, stand for herself because I know how sincere she is. And I think some people have picked up on that. The other thing I'd say is that, you know, with regards to coming in as an entire rezoning and whether or not that necessarily leads to the development that you hope it does, it's not always the case and is even more precipitous now. You know, people are familiar with the Gowanus rezoning, which was approved roughly a year ago and covered 82 different blocks. There has been no new construction under that rezoning. People may be familiar with the Jerome Avenue rezoning in the Bronx, which was passed over 4 years ago and involved 95 blocks. There is one new residential development that was precipitated by that rezoning. The list goes on, the Inwood rezoning, the East Harlem rezoning. These are rezonings where literally over 50 to 55 blocks were rezoned and 1 to 2 new development sites, 1 to 2 out of 57 blocks were developed pursuant to that rezoning. So what we're asserting here is that you can go forward with a vacant site here, and you can go forward with a site that has been and will remain vacant for a very long time if you don't have the right people developing it or the right people who have an interest in doing so. There are a ton of stories right now about people land banking lots and just waiting for a better deal to come down. That's not the case here. You know, Bill and Nadine basically, they've seen what's been offered to other developers, and they've been the ones to step forward and say, I think we can do a little bit better than that without any hand-wringing or without any forcible threats made by anyone towards them or anything. So yes, no one's weaseling out of anything. My job isn't to get out of any type of agreement. And in the event that they do enter into a binding agreement, it will be one that will be fully negotiated with the community board based on binding precedent, and one which, in my opinion, Bill and Nadine would be happy to live up to.
Can I say one thing? Jack, are you on? If my memory is correct, you live on the block we're talking about. You live on the south side of Pacific, correct? And I think you live east of 1010 Pacific in that area. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay, thank you. One thing I would like to say to you, we're totally open to a nonprofit uses, okay? And again, I would like to meet with you and we will show you what we're thinking of. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Archibald, can you just talk a little bit about the M-Crown uses as you see for employment or manufacturing or usage? Whichever
Sure. So
one.
let me give you a little background. I'm Leah Archibald, and I'm the executive director of Evergreen Exchange. And we work with businesses in industrial North Brooklyn to help them grow so that we can keep high quality working class jobs in our community. So we've been around for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th birthday, actually, later this month. And you know, we do a number of things. We work one-on-one with small manufacturing businesses. We do group learning. We do educational stuff. We help them navigate government regulations. We help them find real estate. We help them obtain financing. And we actually also are small-scale industrial developers ourselves. We have 5 different small industrial buildings in mostly Greenpoint and Williamsburg that we lease out to manufacturers at affordable rates. So, you know, the reason we do industrial economic development as an organization, and honestly as why we do it, is because we believe that manufacturing jobs are high quality jobs for communities that, you know, may have residents with lower levels of educational attainment or some other impediment to the work. They, you know, they're low barriers to entry. You don't need a college degree. You don't even necessarily need a high school degree. You don't even need to speak English as a first language for some jobs. And the jobs, generally speaking, are high quality. And so I just pulled up a couple of stats to share with you. So in our community, industrial businesses, manufacturing businesses pay 29% more on average than local retail establishments, right? So the most recent numbers I have are 55,984 per year versus 43,271 per year. 70% of industrial workers in Brooklyn have health insurance through their employer or a union, compared with only 40% of accommodation and food service jobs. Also, as I mentioned, these jobs don't require English proficiency or advanced education. They're high, the reason we do this is they're high quality jobs with low barriers to entry. And so that's really why we do this economic development work. And, it's certainly, they brought us in because, we work with hundreds and hundreds of little businesses that could really work in and, for your M-Crown uses in the industrial space there. So the sort of small manufacturing business that we imagine would thrive in this mixed industrial, commercial, residential environment would be something like, small, garment manufacturing, other sorts of artisan uses, like ceramics, mosaics. I'm trying to think of other businesses we work with. Maybe some food, right? There's a big demand for food production space, and I think that that would have a low impact on the other uses in the building and in the neighborhood. The things I think that wouldn't work, but are also great jobs, would be like woodworkers, metal workers. There's a lot of demand for that space, but I think we have to be really careful to be curating uses that can coexist peacefully with these other commercial uses and residential on top. And that's why we're participating. We're building a really we have the potential to build a really interesting model, and we're happy to lend our expertise and what we know to try and make it happen.
Thank you so much. Next person in the query queue is Dr. Lazor.
Hi, yes, thank you. I feel like I have deja vu seeing another ULURP application come up in this area. And part of the reason that so many people have been asking for a community planning process was because we said each new ULURP that comes through before M-Crown has been dealt with reduces the leverage that the community has in order to demand any of the things that we need. And, I'm glad that Crystal Hudson has promised to not approve any more ULURP applications, but this kind of, one lot at a, or one application at a time negotiation is just, it's not the way to get any sort of planning for the future done. And I take umbrage at what Mr. LaBelle said about, no displacement. There's primary displacement from the lots that are going to be rezoned, but secondary displacement is real. A lot of people want to challenge that, but I can tell you as a tenant organizer, somebody who's been working with Crown Heights Tenant Union for 6 years at this point, secondary displacement is real, and the timeline for it is longer, and the space for it is wider than what seeker, the CEQR, would have you reveal by law. I'm working with a building that's, that is next to an Atlantic Yards building, and the landlord is trying to bully tenants out of their rent stabilized leases or out of the building entirely. Other tenants in buildings close to the M-Crown area, their buildings have warehoused units, landlords refusing to do repairs. Near another land use application that we had in the last few years, an instance of deed theft, and a landlord who has hired goons to terrorize the last rent stabilized tenant in their building. So seriously, no displacement is impossible to say. And honestly, to make a claim like that right now, where the borough of Brooklyn has more eviction cases than the Bronx for the first time in decades. And right now, only 1 out of every 3 tenants going to housing court for an eviction case has right to counsel. The right to counsel is falling apart. People are being evicted. And I think it's inappropriate to discount this issue. It's extremely important. It's part of the reason that everybody wanted a community planning process. The community planning process is supposed to be what gets our community the resources in order to withstand the pressures of the real estate market. I understand if a property owner is having trouble with the delays that are happening, the way that it could affect the financing, and that is a shame. To me, it's not as much of a shame as a family getting forced out of their home. And if developers are frustrated with the timelines for getting their projects done, maybe the place where they should be putting their efforts and their time is on lobbying our city to do actual city planning, to do comprehensive city planning, so that everybody knows what the constraints of each lot that they own are going to be, and so that the community that already lives here gets taken care of, and so that the development is one that actually meets the needs of the community. Mr. LaBelle he represented the properties that actually reneged on their promises. That's why I'm having the deja vu, honestly. And it's very hard to take this process seriously when every time a promise is being made of a great new deal. I would strongly urge my fellow committee members, whenever this does come to a vote, if it comes to a vote, to really hold our elected officials to their promises to get actual city planning done, community planning done, rather than continue to undermine that process with more ULURP applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'd like to remind the assembled, this is purely a presentation. There will be no votes on this matter tonight. The applicant, or I should say the lot loaner, because there is no application before us, wanted to come here to just present what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how it looks like. So with that, I'm going to call upon Mr. Pratt.
May I briefly respond?
Surely.
Thank you, and it will be brief. Thank you. I heard the comments of Dr. Lazar, and my choice of words was very careful and meaningful. I didn't say there would be no displacement, period. I said no displacement directly caused by this rezoning. So Dr. Lazar mentions goons and evictions and the right to counsel, and these are all important issues and regrettable conditions which exist when you are kicking people out of their homes. So again, this is a vacant lot. You are in a census tract where the last recorded data as of 2020 for the prior time period was recorded as having an increase in residential density of 30% and an increase of residential units of 13%. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but I think everyone can get the picture that if you pour more and more people into an area and you don't create any units, that housing pressures go up, prices go up, people get squeezed out. People who would be in units that may have been affordable now because of price pressures are no longer able to live in those units. So again, you have an applicant here who wants to create 150 units of housing with affordability. And, frankly, to talk about other developments, yes, I did represent other owners who came in, not all of them, but other owners who were rezoned to R7A, and none of them had a binding agreement. I repeat, None of them had a binding agreement. This gives an opportunity to hold the developer responsible here. And moreover, when you talk about spot rezonings and individual rezonings as such, the argument you could make here is that if you've got 25 lots or portions of lots in a row on Pacific, which were all zoned to an R7A density, it's actually makes less land use sense to have one M11 parcel amidst those properties rather than rezone that also at R7A. Could it have been done at the time? Sure, it probably should have been addressed at the time. We're here to basically infill that zoning, which again was approved by the community board in every case of R7A. And that's why we think it's a good application.
Just to, clarify the affordable housing, it's MIH option 1. This community board has, emphasized option 3, which is the extremely affordable option, and it's what most people, the last 2 applications that came through did in the end. But, again, it's a one-off negotiation. I'm sure that the community plan, when it leads to its rezoning, is going to find the appropriate density for this area. But again, it will come with actual community planning for the area. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to review the persons who have raised hands or she'll be the next speaking order, and that would be Mr. Crashes, Mr. Buckles, Mr. Francoeur, Ms. Levitt, and Ms. Weinstein. Please, if you have not been included in that, please, verbally say me too and tell me who you are. Okay, hearing none, Mr. Crashes.
Thank you, Sharon. I just want to certainly just thank Sarah for making such an eloquent response to the situation. I really do believe that the community is best served by waiting for the community-wide plan. This is something the community board's worked hard for. Everybody in this committee has voted for it and supports it. And when we approve these individual applications, we chisel away at our leverage and we remove the incentive for the city to move forward. Doesn't make any sense. And one of the reasons that we want to do that is to increase the outreach to reach other parts of the community and get their priorities as part of the developments themselves. And so I just really want to reiterate that we encourage the developer not to move forward. And I also want to thank Mr. Callahan for suggesting that we hear from the council member who and council member's representative, because I think if we have a council member that's willing to say they're not going to support these applications as individual applications, we're lucky, and we shouldn't be throwing that away now. And finally, just to the point of the enforceability, and it's just maybe a point of clarification, because I remember that we have had a bunch of promises of commitments and even promises of binding commitments that we haven't been able to see. And I don't really know the answer to this, but I remember that 870 Atlantic, and I guess it's 1034 to 42 Atlantic, we had commitments for 35% affordable housing. Now, have those, is that paperwork that been made public? Have we seen the enforcement and the commitments in the writing and the signatures? I can't remember that. So maybe somebody here could clarify that. And just finally, just to go back to what Sarah said, there's secondary displacement. We've had commitments to 25% affordable housing. We've had commitments now to 35% affordable housing. That's still 65% market rate and 75% market rate housing. Secondary displacement is real. And that's why the outreach should happen in the community. The priorities should be set by everybody in the community. And the community, our city council member is trying to do that kind of outreach. So what we need to do is get started with that and stop even considering these individual applications. Let's send the message to developers, just please, if you really, really want this community to succeed, just wait, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crashes. Mr. Buckles?
Hi.
My name is John. Sorry to interrupt this, Peter, but I did ask about the paperwork for the binding for the 870 Atlantic and 1034 to 42. Mr. LaBelle, I'm sure he would know if that paperwork is made public yet or not with the signatures. Thanks.
Yeah, it's inappropriate for me to comment on applications brought by other clients at this time. I'll note that the community board and the council member's office, as well as other organizations, were involved in all of those agreements, which were executed prior to the time of the council discussion. So that's, I mean, like, you can speak to other stakeholders with regards to what you can see and what copies you can see. I know that some of them are disclosed, and I know that the specifically Grand and Pacific, which was the only rezoning which had a portion that was in R7A, that agreement was entirely negotiated and was codified by the community board. So I would note that the Atlantic Avenue applications all did seek greater affordability. None of the R7A rezonings saw greater affordability. They basically they were so close to what was offered by the M-Crown committee that they looked to the level of affordability, the amount of M-Crown use, and everything else, and said, okay, these deals are what we think is good for the community. So they were kind of entirely different. But that agreement was negotiated by no fewer than 3 members of Community Board 8. So you can kind of talk to them about it if you want.
Yeah, I get that's our problem, is that for those of us who haven't seen the agreements, we don't know what the details are. And so it would be certainly with 870 Atlantic, and it would be helpful to see that one, for example.
Again, it's for me, it's a conflict to discuss that at this time, but should you wish to talk to members of the community board about it, then that's your right.
Peter, your interest is so noted. Mr. Buckholz.
Thank you so much. My name is John Buckholz. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and to thank the developer and the representative for a proposal that brings to my neighborhood exactly what it needs, which is homes for people who want to live here. I am a single family property owner in Crown Heights. I'll come back to that in a second. I've lived in many apartments in Crown Heights over the course of my adult life and have faced the pressures of landlord misbehavior and cost pressure, and that's a function of a lack of inventory. My family and I would think, are the kinds of people that the city would want living here, and it took an enormous effort to stay here. And I'm looking on Street Easy right now, I'm seeing a single unit with 4 bedrooms, which probably bigger than we need with 2 kids, but let's call what I need a 4-bedroom apartment. The most affordable unit currently on Street Easy is $3,000. So that would require an annual household income of $120,000. There is not enough inventory. And the times in my life when I've had to leave, I'm fortunate to have privilege to be able to move around, but it's been because landlords have taken advantage of the scarcity and lack of inventory and made it impossible for my family to stay where we were. I can't imagine the pressures I would have faced if I were less mobile. I just want to say on a personal note, I work for a software company. My wife has a good job. I was able to buy this house because someone died. That's not a healthy ecosystem for New York. That should not be the status quo. And the one thing that's missing from this meeting, and that's always missing from these meetings, is the perspective of the neighbors whom I would gain who are not able to speak because they're not part of the community yet. I think it's shameful that we're denying people opportunity and moving the goalposts in an environment where 38,000 adults last year were living in shelters in New York. And on Tuesday, that number was 41,000. I think we should all take a look in the mirror and think about what we're really objecting to and whether it's a matter of our personal preferences or not. But I just want to say thank you again, because I think that the one thing I need more of is more neighbors and more people who want to live in this community. So I really appreciate your putting up with this ridiculous, old-fashioned system that privileges the voices of people who have time to show up, that privileges the voices of people like me who often speak in opposition. So thank you so much. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to have spoken. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Buckholz. Mr. Francoeur?
Yeah, let me unmute and I'll start my camera too so you guys can see me. I think it's starting. Yeah, there it is. Hey everybody. Thanks for the presentation to the applicants. This has been a great conversation to kind of listen into. I'm a new member, so I'm still kind of picking up yeah, I'm picking up context and learning more about M Crown, the rezoning, and what's going on in the neighborhood. But my first impression is generally positive towards this ULURP application. I work maybe like a block away from where this is, so oftentimes I'll take a walk down Pacific, and I've seen the buildings rising on the neighboring sites, and I've seen the empty lot where this building would go. So it would definitely be, great to have that turned into a building, some housing sooner rather than later. I particularly like there's a lot of new housing buildings, oftentimes from a pedestrian standpoint, kind of functions like a wall. There's not really much interaction with the street. So I appreciate that. I think probably in line with some of the M Crown stuff, but there's commercial use or potential commercial use and the daycare in the building. So that's kind of nice to see. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so again, I'm still learning more about the M Crown stuff, but I definitely agree that ideally, we have a forward thinking like land use policy in the city, and we aren't doing all these, spot rezonings because it's tough to kind of have to rehash this bit by bit. And it seems like this committee's done a lot of work in the M Crown rezoning, which seems like it's finally kicking into gear. So I know some of the speculation appears to be, hey, if we let this go forward, then maybe we lose out on the full, M Crown rezoning. So I'd love to hear. I know we've got a representative from the council member's office, if they could give their, give a status report on where that rezoning is for some of us who aren't as in the loop, and maybe even like an opinion on that speculation as to whether or not we think moving ahead with this would put the rezoning in a problematic place. But knowing that we don't live in we live in the world we live in, I would definitely love to see the lot turned into housing sooner rather than later. Yeah, don't envy me. I'm a renter in the neighborhood, and I've recently been on the rental market, and the pressures on rent are just very intense right now. So anything we can do to kind of increase supply to kind of stem those pressures would be a boon for current residents, and all the people who the demand to move into the neighborhood. So yeah, thanks Ms. Wetterberg for running a great meeting.
No worries. Mr. Francoeur, earlier, Councilwoman Hudson was had joined our call, and we indicated that Mr. Wright would be providing an update. Given that this is a community meeting, I want to make sure that community members speak. And of course, we'd love to hear from Mr. Wright with any updates. So with that being said, Ms. Levitt.
Hi, got my video. Hi, I'm trying to turn my video on. You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I don't know if you can see me, but
no.
Okay. So anyway, I really do appreciate okay, I'll just speak. So the one part that feels missing from Ms. Olsner's proposal is, yes, sweetheart, I'm trying to turn my video on. My daughter, can you see me?
Yes.
No,
Okay,
now we
great.
do.
Okay, wonderful. This is my daughter, Naomi. She and I have been living in this area. We live actually right on the, Nuni, come baby. We live, okay, so you don't need to do it right now. So we live right on the corner of Pacific and Grand. And we've been walking by the neighborhood. We moved to the neighborhood when there were a lot of vacant lots. So I very much appreciate the fact that Ms. Olsner has been considering the idea of how our lives have changed post-pandemic and what people need and what young families need and what young families want. Because we are families, and we were very dramatically affected by the building going up on Pacific and Grand, as well as 1010 Pacific Street. One thing that really was wonderful, and I'm sure that Mr. LaBelle is aware of, is that Pacific and Grand, when it was still a vacant lot and it was just trying to be cleaned up, was available. The owner of the lot and the developer allowed Jewish communities in particular to have access to that site for outdoor space. I know there's a lot of interest in this part of Brooklyn in urban farming and other kinds of community gardens. Community gardens are something that sprung up in the 70s and 80s. And, I'm sure people on this call are very familiar with the history of how those have evolved. Frankly, I don't think land banking sounds all that bad because of the fact that these buildings have gone up so fast. And so for us, it's like this concept of the comprehensive plan, the most important element of it that we truly need are more lots that can stay open. And so I'm really, from the bottom of my heart, I think that if there's any way to get either the existing developments, I'm also very concerned about what's going on with the building that's now going up on Grand between Pacific and Dean, because it seems like it's really an odd shape. It seems like it was really poorly designed. And again, as other people have alluded to, the sense of a lack of an overall vision. But for me, the thing that's really missing is where can we have kind of open community public spaces? And I truly appreciate the early childhood and the light industry. But for us, it's like pollinator gardens and, dog runs, these things that have to do with sort of the intersection between urban nature and urban life and young families just seems totally missing. And it's really important for us to understand that, I appreciated Dr. Lazar's comments about displacement, because displacement is honestly not just human. There's also, everything from, wildlife and seeds and sort of the natural elements, water levels are rising and all of these things. And so I would be really grateful if there's any way to adapt these proposals. First of all, if there's a way to sort of slow down the development. I'm so grateful that Councilwoman Hudson is saying that they're not going to vote on this right away, because there really needs to be a sense of a much bigger picture, including natural resources and open natural spaces. And, even with 1010 Pacific, if there's any way to allow for, I mentioned pollinator gardens, little ways to allow for open public green spaces within the development. And that perhaps could be part of the Evergreen Exchange's ideas of what kinds of light industry work. Vertical gardens, like the building on Grand, to me would have been so great if they had been able to have a bit of a setback or parts that were not all the same level, because we live in a building where we do have terrace gardens. Our building existed, 12 years before any of this, maybe more than any of these things went up. And so I was away for a few weeks in July, and I came home and it was very dark in the morning. And my neighbors and I are really affected by the fact that the light patterns have changed so dramatically. And so our personal private garden spaces are no longer flourishing because of the way that we used to have morning light on our front balcony. It's no longer there until 9 a.m. And so the idea of trying to figure out how, thinking about the history of the neighborhood. I mean, we have ideas, even seeing that there's like the poultry, I don't know what to call it. My daughter calls it a chicken factory that's on Grand Street, and thinking about, the history of the neighborhood and animal development and gardens. I think that's really it. I don't need to take a lot of time, but I'm really committed to understand and to sort of presenting the concepts that what the children in the neighborhood want as they're growing up. They're not just, pre-K, but thinking about the fact that as children grow, we need more parks. We need more parks like Stroud Park, for example, where it's truly an intergenerational mixed-use recreational area. On Pacific Street, on the other side of Grand, towards Classen, there's a nightclub that is now there that is extraordinarily popular. I'm friendly with the owner, and I thought he might have been on this call, because the sense of, and also, for example, Wild Birds that was just shut down. It was on Dean Street. There was a huge following. This is what grew out of the pandemic for us. It was not just the need for remote workspace. We figured out how to work in the same space with our children. But the idea of having places where the community can gather publicly for recreational activities, whether it's a roller skating rink or community gardens or places to hear live music and performance, seems to be really missing. And if there's a way to have that be incorporated into, obviously I care very much about affordable housing and the stats for homelessness in this state, in this city. But I think that adding more housing is not necessarily the answer, because we know that there's, tons of absentee owners in this area. I don't know what the numbers are of vacant properties in 550 Vanderbilt, for example, but I have friends who live there, and it's just really obvious that it's, there's a lot of, there are vacant apartments. So that's to me, it's about trying to figure out, how do we redistribute these resources, but also how do we maintain a sense of public, green, open space? Last summer, we had a bunch of teenagers that were hanging out in our building, and my upstairs neighbors, said, "What are you doing? This is a private building. Why are you hanging on our terraces?" And they said, "We needed a place to hang out." So, I mean, I think that's really it. These were not criminals. They're not trespassing. There was just teenagers. They wanted a place to chill. So figuring out how to open the space to have access to the public for recreational activities seems like something that, if the private developers can add that to it, I would be really grateful. I think it's entirely important in terms of thinking about why people moved to this neighborhood. We were attracted to the vacant lots and the birds and the bees and everything else that we're losing, and the light. So thank you.
Okay. Ella, thank you for your comments. And also thank you for sending me the email. Gib had forwarded an email you sent to me, I think over the summer. And I appreciate that. Everything you've just said, we have noted, and we will have a meeting with the architect. And also, we have worked with one of the top urban planners here in the city, talking about open space and talking about POPs, so that there's more open space. We understand that need. You have a young child. I have raised tons of kids. Hi. I've raised tons of kids, and I'm a grandmother, and I know the importance of having spaces where kids can run around and be together and to have sunlight, and to bring community together is important. Thank you.
And I would just to underscore Nadine's point, and I know, one of the things that's important is that this is a conversation where we get as much input as we're able to take in. Right now, understanding we just ran through the presentation rather quickly, the ground floor plan does have garden space and backyard landscape space. For the commercial use, it has 1,700 square feet of garden in the back. For the residential tenants, it has close to 2,000 square feet. And importantly, for the Early Childhood Development Center, there's a children's garden, which has greater than 3,000 square feet. I think it's close to 3,300. So, so it's an important part of the project. As Nadine said, as we continue to sharpen the application and the proposal, we're happy to take more of those considerations. But at least at this early phase of the project, there is that space that's included.
Well, I appreciate that space, but I'm not clear how it will be accessible to the public. You know what I mean? And I know it's complicated financially, and I appreciate your wisdom and knowledge about all of the rezoning logistics and law. However, it's like, that's what I'm saying, is like figuring out how, and maybe it is part of the comprehensive plan, and it's not necessarily the Olsner's responsibility to figure out how we're going to maintain, community gardens and this kind of thing in the neighborhood. But so thinking about, in terms of design and architectural decisions, if there's a way to allow those gardens to be fully accessible in public, I think that would be an enormous gift to the community, for all residents and not just people who live in that building.
Noted. Thank you.
Guys, I just realized I was on mute. Ms. Weinstein?
Given the hour, I'm going to defer, and I think we all want to hear from Andrew Wright. But I did want to comment, just from this one meeting, we've heard so many diverse views on what could, should, and what we'd like to see in this space, as in all the spaces. Therefore, for me, the community planning process is the only way to have everyone heard, to integrate everyone's thoughts, and to hear someone like Ella, as well as John, as well as Sarah, and to say, let us try to put this together in a cohesive manner where everyone is listened to, everyone is heard, and hopefully a process can be developed that answers most of the needs. So I will defer and ask Andrew to speak. Thank you,
Actually,
Ms. Wedderburn.
actually, in the proper order, Ms. Ortiz Joyner.
6, 1, 5, 3, 6.
Hi, thank you. And I don't want to take the meeting in a different direction, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. And please correct me if I'm wrong, in regarding a comment that Mr. Buckholz said, that he's the kind of people that the city wants to move here. Something, I can't repeat it verbatim, but I know that what I heard, I felt a bit offended by that. I congratulate him on buying his single family home, but isn't he adding to the problem? Because there are a lot of homes here, townhouses that are 2 and 3 family, and I know landlords who have below market rent. So he's actually also part of the problem. But I was very offended by that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz Joyner. Okay, does anyone else want to speak prior to us hearing from Mr. Wright with updates? Okay, Andrew, you seem to be the man of the hour. Let's go.
I gotta say, I've never been this popular. Well, first of all, for those who weren't on earlier, Crystal did pop on before she had to leave, and she did reiterate that she has no intention and will not support any private applications ahead of the neighborhood-wide rezoning. And I want to touch on first a little bit as to why that's the case before I go into the next steps with that process. So one, DCP has limited resources, and we need to make sure that all of those resources are fully focused on this neighborhood-wide rezoning process. And even one private application will pull from that and will take away from our ability to fully realize the vision this community board and many folks on this call have fought for years. And Crystal, once again, will not support any private applications in the M11 area that will be rezoned. So that's to say, a lot of the goals that we're looking for and that folks have brought up about this project will be realized once that rezoning is complete. We will be building hundreds, if not thousands, of new units, many of which will be deeply affordable. We'll be able to also accommodate and recognize the increase of population in this area and prepare for it. That means whether we need new schools, new park space, new open space, to redesign some of the streets near us. The goal for this entire process is to bring all of the relevant agencies to the table and ensure that this is a well thought out, true plan for our community and not just a single developer-led rezone of an individual plot. So with that, I just want to quickly pivot to the rezoning plan and the neighborhood-wide comprehensive plan that Crystal's been talking about for a while, and that, of course, this community board has been at the forefront for. So the M-Crown entire operation is going to likely start soon. So it's been very delayed, and we'll be completely transparent and honest with you. What's been happening is we've been trying to find a facilitator to help run a lot of these workshops. I'll go through the structure in a second. But unfortunately, well, one, we had to put out an RFP for the Department of City Planning, put that out. And it just took a little bit of time to get that through, get that approved, get it out, receive submissions, have interviews with the various applicants, and select an applicant. So we're optimistic that that whole process should be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks, and that our office, Department of City Planning, and the facilitator can hold a meeting, discuss next steps, and then hopefully kick off this process. Likely in November is what we're aiming for. And so in terms of what the process is going to look like, we're still in the nascent stages here. We still want to have these meetings with DCP and the facilitator, but we're looking to have a steering committee, and we've already invited some folks to that to help lead the process and sort of filter a lot of the commentary that's going to be coming to these groups and help shape the recommendations to the Department of City Planning. And so that steering committee is going to be comprised of folks from the local community boards, of course, the folks here at CB8, Chair Wedderburn, we've extended an invitation, as well as many other folks on CB2 and 3 who will be involved in the catchment area of this rezoning proposal, as well as sort of experts in these spaces, be it housing experts, transportation experts, street safety experts. The goal here is to get folks at the table who have a deep understanding and just will be able to help shape this project to address all the needs that it will need to address. And so the next sort of piece of that is we're going to have working groups that are subject based. So we don't have them finalized yet, but I would say expect things like transportation, open space, housing and land use, things like that, capital improvements largely, that we want that are completely open to the public. We want everyone on this call and anyone that can join to attend those meetings, and we'll be, of course, promoting them as widely as we can. And the goal of these is to have robust community discussions about what we need. And I heard a lot of ideas on this call, what some folks' opinions are, and those will be the spaces to talk about that at a more macro level for this entire area. And so once those are finalized and set, we'll of course be in close communication with constituents as well as the community boards to get folks to those meetings. And the goal here is, over the course of a few months, to have a bunch of working group meetings where we have subject matter experts, community residents discuss what the needs are. We'll have steering committee members in each of those working groups to help facilitate and work with the conversation. All of those working groups will then filter up to the steering committee, which will review all of the recommendations put forth, all the discussion placed, and then finalize the demands for the area that we will then send on to DCP. So that's a bit of a bird's eye view. Unfortunately, until we have everything set in stone, we won't be able to give you a much firmer timeline, how often these meetings will be, things like that. But I would say anticipate the meetings to go from fall of this year in through early spring of 2023. And our timeline is going to have to adjust accordingly, and we can of course share that moving forward. And yeah, so that's the big picture as to where we're at. And if any of y'all have any thoughts ahead of this, you're always welcome to reach out to our office. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have my email address, and if not, it's just anwright@council.nyc.gov. Always feel free to reach out. And yeah, so that's our update. And we hope to share more moving forward once we have, like I said, final structures, meeting guidelines, all that fun stuff. But we wanted to make sure that we didn't leave y'all in the dark. We know it's been a while since Crystal's talked about this. We've been working hard. It's just taking a little bit of time. And so we look forward to getting this started hopefully next month.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, Andrew,
Don't change it yet, or is she gonna think when she Holland then change it?
Okay, Andrew, thank you for that update. I have been sitting on the subcommittee for years, and our property is basically infill, and they have negotiated what the rezoning would be like. I can't wait years and months for this process to happen. I understand and appreciate everything that everybody in this community has said and what they want. I understand that. This is just one site, and we're ready to go. We're infill. Now, if I can't get some movement on here, I'm going to lose this property. And the next person sitting here, they're not going to care anything about this community board. Trust me, I've been talking to developers for a long time. So, I ask you to consider what we're saying, and we're really here right now to say that we need to move forward. Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, I would just close by saying that there's a site, it's called the Zoning Application Portal. It's administered by the Department of City Planning. And if you go on that portal, and it's a public site, and anyone can go on it, you can click off certain boxes and you can figure out where applications are in the process. And in Brooklyn Community Board 8, you look at all the applications and you click off ones that have been noticed for hearings or are in process or are, and I have the site up right now, or are in public review. There's only one application that's either in public review, been filed or noticed, and it's this application. You are not talking about a spate of developers. You're talking about Nadine and Bill. Intentions matter and words matter. We appreciate the discussion around a neighborhood rezoning. We also have facts which basically demonstrate that of the 4 rezonings cited, Gowanus, Jerome, Inwood, East Harlem, and close to 300 blocks that were rezoned, 300 blocks. There's a total of 3 new developments that were engendered by those rezonings. So, so here's an applicant who's been around the process and been around the area, who's got a site that is one of 25 sites on a stretch on Pacific, which is the only site that has not been rezoned. So again, we could not have more respect for the council member, for Andrew, for this Department of City Planning, but we're confident that when we come in with this application, we're basically going to be coming into a project and not to a rezoned site and a parcel that's basically going to be up in limbo and, you know, is going to be waiting around literally for years. So again, we thank everyone for their consideration. We understand the demands that are made, and we understand the challenges, but we're happy to have this conversation and to show the community board what this is about.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. And with that, we thank you for providing information to us regarding this particular lot. It is important that the community maintains its voice in all of this, but it is also nice to feel that we've been heard.
Thank you, Ms. Wedderburn. Very much appreciated.
Welcome. So this concludes the formal part of our meeting, but we have other items to talk about. So I think pretty much what would have been covered in old business, which would be the status of the steering committee for the proposed M-Crown rezoning. And I would ask if anyone has any questions or anything that is old business at this moment to please raise their hands. Who is GP and who is GP?
That's me. I just want to say, and I guess this is old
I'm
business.
sorry. And who is GP? What is your name?
My name is GP.
Okay, General Practitioner, what do you have to say for us?
Thank you. I just this is old business only because I sat on this board as Bill and Nadine did many years ago when there were just around 5 or 6 of us before there was 50. And I do want to credit Nadine and Bill in that they constantly would ask, like, hey, what are you looking for when we maybe develop? There was a consideration of listening to those that lived in the area. And I do take Nadine at her word, and that it is a concern that another developer could come in, just like in 1010, take over and do what they did, as we have carefully planned what we're looking for in this rezoning. And Nadine would take copious notes and was very considerate when it was just a small team of us. So I want to give her kudos for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have finished reviewing the Pacific Suite. So the Pacific Suite application. And as I said, it was nice to hear from them and to feel that we were heard. Thank you. Nix?
Yeah, I just have one last thing to say about the Pacific Suite application. Mr. Lobel is like very good in what he does, but let us not be fooled, because I understand Nadine wants the best, and he is the best of the lawyers. So the community board and us, like, let us all really be alert and like watching out and making this property like a different example, not just another high rise that promises affordable housing, whatnot. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just urging everybody, and I know it's just been a proposal tonight, but I just want everybody to be on the lookout and not. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. So just as a reminder to the group assembled, we have been talking for 2 hours and 15 minutes. And there was a matter that, for new business, there was a matter that was brought up within our Google chat group. And Elaine Weinstein reached out to me about that particular issue. So would you like to raise that, Elaine? Karen? Either one of you? Is my computer not working? Can you guys hear me?
Sleepy.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Lisa. Just I'm like, wait, is Optimum failing me once again? Okay, so one of the things that has been circulated around is a study paper from an organization that does not comprise primarily of developers and financiers about muting or eliminating the community board's voice in land use matters. Are you all familiar with that as it was in our land use Google group?
Yes,
Yes.
MTOP you're talking about.
Right. So we're not actually talking about MTOP circulated that. Did you actually get a chance to read the document itself?
I did.
Okay. So here's the thing. MTOP is an organization that's based and has primarily worked in Community Board 9, and they provide a particular viewpoint, right? If you look at the most recent issues that have been circulated by MTOP, they're now talking about the role of the chair of Community Board 9. So I wanted to make sure that we understand the process, what the community board's role is in land use at this moment, the fact that it's tied to the city charter. And I spoke to someone earlier in the day and said, their point of view was, we're going to be screwed. And the thing is, I think the most important part is that as board members, as committed community members, that we make our voices heard. And there's a process by which the committee raises to the executive committee so that a resolution or points of view can be expressed, and we can coalesce with our other similarly situated community boards to make our voice stronger. So just because you don't see that kind of robust conversation in the chat doesn't mean that the community board does not have a process, that all board members, including Chair Weatherspoon, are aware of this. And I think this might be part of our discussion items. The executive committee is having a meeting on Tuesday. Silence? I'm surprised.
Could you repeat the question, please?
It's no question. I was talking about the land use item, the item that was circulated in land use, attached to the land use agenda by Karen, regarding the MTOP notification that there are forces of force that would like to separate the community board from the land use process.
I think Gib
Can I
answered
just
that
also
email though.
I'm sorry?
I do know that Gib did answer and said that that wasn't actual, like that wasn't facts. So I think maybe people were not saying anything because he responded to the email about that.
Okay, thank you for that, Lisa, because I wasn't sure how many people read that. Fior, you took your hand down. Is that because you were going to say what Lisa said?
No, but now that you've called on me, I'll say it. But this wasn't, I was just wondering within it's not the mayor, but another agency, about the removal or lessening the environmental review when it comes to development. It's not official, but it's something that I have heard, and if it's true, I think that would be detrimental.
You would not be the only one, and that's something I'm sure not only does this community board would have concerns about it, but the community boards that have seen a spate of development. Thank you for that. Next person, Deborah Young.
You're mute, Miss Young. You're mute.
Oops, I'm sorry. I thought I had unmuted myself. What I was going to suggest is that maybe very, very, very succinctly, just give an overview of what the proposal is because maybe everyone did not have an opportunity to read it, or it was so long and so involved that some of us might have lost the essence of what is being proposed. So maybe I just wanted to throw that out.
So very succinctly, a proposal has been made by I don't even know if they're a not-for-profit group, but a budgeting committee that's been active in a number of things, primarily composed of real estate interests and financiers, and essentially finding an impediment that, the community boards are involved in land use, specifically the ULURP process, and they are making a case for that community boards are removed from the land use process to speed up the process by which they can have development. I would also can make the commitment that I will attach the original proposal and outline the specific pages that address that, which are just 2 pages, which I'm sure everybody could have the capacity to read to see what it is. But as I said, it's my expectation that we will have greater conversation about it. And one of the things is that if the community board has this committee has serious concerns, or there is a possibility in the future that we will not only write letters, but we will also write a resolution. So the question is, what is the purpose of a resolution? And a resolution from the community board requires an answer. So we'll have more information. Thanks for that cue, Deb. I see Karen's hand and Sarah's hand. Karen?
Yes, hi. I also attended a meeting last week at BRIC. I don't know if anyone from this board attended, where they discussed foreclosures and evictions and the situation with land use and affordable housing. It was done at BRIC Center right over on Fulton Street, where there was East New York, there was assembly members and things of that nature. And this is also the situation of the way things are being handled in many ways is of concern for just about every community that we heard voice their stories and attorneys who spoke up for and against a lot of things that are going on in our community. So I would say to everyone, stay alert, think for yourself, and speak up and stand up for the things that you don't agree with.
Thank you, Karen. Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. I would agree with Ms. Gray. And I know that Community Board 9 has a subcommittee to study the report / proposals from the Citizens Budget Commission. I don't know if it makes sense for our community board to do something like that, but I do hope that, like you suggested, Chair Wedderburn, that we can, at least issue, whether it's a letter or a resolution, whatever would be the strongest to assert our desire for the community board to still have input, because, even as things stand, we only get an advisory opinion, and to take away even that or to reduce that is just a very frustrating prospect indeed. So thank you. Yeah.
So just, every community board operates by different rules. The establishment of a subcommittee on Community Board 8 does not come from the committee itself. It comes from the chair. Ms. Granville?
I was a little concerned when I saw the attachment to your agenda, to the land use agenda. And I just wanted to know, when someone wants to bring attention to an issue, is it appropriate to just attach it to the agenda instead of sending it out separately?
It is not the way how we operate. Preference and practice has been that such a notice is not attached to an agenda, but it's something that is posted on the land use Google page. So may not be aware of process and procedures, but that is the way to go to be able to read that. And the reason why it becomes confusing as to whether or not we're going to take up that issue as part of our main body of our discussion, despite the printed agenda. Thank you, Ms. Granville. Jack, have you not lowered your hand, or would you like to speak?
Oh yeah, I would like to just say, I know that you mentioned that you would bring this up at the executive committee, but will we have maybe, can we set aside some time to put that on the full board, the full CB8 board about Mayor Adams taking away our power?
It actually won't be on the official agenda. It might appear in a committee report to the general body. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I
Ms.
was frantic. My computer just told me it was running out of batteries.
No worries. We've all had that concern. Ms. Granville, I see you've raised your hand again.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. There was a question on the ballot maybe a year or two ago where they asked people if there should be term limits for community board members. And I was appalled at people who decided as a majority, yes. And I think that because people do not understand that the developers do not have term limits, okay? So it may take you a term or two as a board member to understand what the issues are and to understand the language that is used. So I really thought that it would be a disadvantage for the city, or excuse me, for the public to decide, oh yes, there should be term limits, because I think it would be serving up the city on a platter for the developers to cut up. So I really couldn't quite understand why. I guess people didn't understand, or maybe they didn't read.
I wouldn't comment on either one of those things, but I think one of the beauties of a community or a committee like ours is that we have a lot of people with institutional memory. And their participation is always welcome because there's certainly things that have happened before I even could spell community board that affect us now. Okay, so GP, Mr. General Practitioner, is your hand raised or did you not lower your hand before? Okay, thank you. Mr. Robinson, I might ask you the same question. Did you have something else to say or is your hand okay? Ms. Granville took her hand down. All right, Mr. Robinson.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay. So at this juncture, is there anything else that someone would like to discuss as a matter of new business? Hearing no voices and seeing no hands, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Motion for adjournment.
And do I hear a second? Who's the second? Lisa?
Wasti Mensa. And I third it too.
You third it too. You seconded too. Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned at 8:44 p.m. We almost made 2.5 hours on a lovely Thursday night. Looking forward to seeing all of you in person next week at our board meeting. Have a good evening and